So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein. As always, I am so happy to be here with you today. My guest today is none other than John Kippen. And if his name sounds familiar, that makes a whole lot of sense. His TEDx talk, his TED talk, has garnered over 1 million views and counting. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a really clear idea and understanding of why. So I want to tell you a little bit about John, and then I'll let him tell you his really incredibly compelling and inspiring story. So John Kippen is a motivational speaker, empowerment coach, professional magician, author of Playing the Hand You Are Dealt. He's also the subject of the documentary John's Ultimate Illusion, co-starring his friend and multi-award winning actress Jamie Lee Curtis. So, John's 12-year and counting journey of recovering from the trauma of having his face paralyzed after a brain tumor removal surgery has allowed him to triumph over adversity. He often reminds people that impossible is really I'm possible. So, again, by the end of this episode, you'll understand why John's TEDx talk has garnered well over 1 million views and counting. And so, without further ado, I'd rather you hear more from John himself. John, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy.
It's so
I'm
good to
happy to
have you
be here.
here.
I'm thrilled to speak to your audience.
Oh, that is so great. And you know, your message is so perfectly aligned with the message of this podcast, helping people feel, do, and live better overall. So I love your story is so compelling. I'm about halfway through your book. And by the way, before we even get into the interview, I want to let people know that in the interview, he's going to give you a code for getting the book completely for free, incredibly generous. But the book, again, is Playing the Hand You Are Dealt. But you have to listen to the episode because I'm not going to put the code in the show notes, but we're going to tell you later on tonight. But John, your journey is so compelling. I have a sense of it from your talk and your other interviews and from your book, but I'm wondering if you could share your journey to where you are now and all of the things that you're doing and everything you've learned.
Sure. So I grew up in Los Angeles to two attorneys, only child, um, upper middle class. So I went to a private school, had everything I needed, friends, family, and I studied theater. And through studying theater, I learned how to be an out of the box thinker and think creatively. I went to college, studied theater again, stumbled into a IT consulting career, and I was living my best life. And then in July of 2002, I was diagnosed with a 4.5 centimeter acoustic neuroma brain tumor. And from diagnosis to surgery was a week.
Wow.
What sent me to the doctors was that I was having trouble hearing men's voices on the left side of my left ear. And then I started getting dizzy. So I knew there was something, and it wasn't all in my head, or maybe it was. Um, but anyway, so I went and got an MRI, and the neurologist and neurosurgeon looked at the MRI, and they said, matter of fact, no bedside manner, John. You have a huge tumor. It's displacing your brainstem. It's killing you. We pushed another patient, and you're going to be operated on Monday.
Wow.
Um, there's a chance that there'll be some residual facial weakness. We hope to prevent that. And then they left the room. And I remember sitting on the examining table with the tissue paper under my ear, squirming, hearing the tissue paper kind of tearing, in total shock. What did they just say? How long did they say the surgery was going to take? And so I left the examining room and found the doctor, and I said, "Excuse me, we weren't done." And I brought him back to the room, and we finished the conversation where he kind of prepared me for what the surgery was going to be like.
14 hours.
14-hour surgery, yeah. So I got my affairs in order. Got one of my computer guys who worked for me to agree to take over the company for a month or two while I recovered. I had no idea. I didn't know what I was going through. And back in 2002, there was no Facebook. So there were no support groups really. So I was managing by my own expectations of what it was going to be like. So I remember checking in the night before the surgery. They said, get a good night's sleep. I'm like, yeah, right. And then 6 a.m. an orderly comes, knocks on the door, and it says, okay, here we go, John. Get undressed, get on this gurney, and we'll cover you with this blanket, and we'll roll you into surgery. And they rolled me down this hallway, and all I can see are these fluorescent lights going into an elevator down to the surgical floor, into the surgical prep area. And the first thing was the nurse said, we need to shave half your head. You want us to do it now or after you're under? I was like, after I'm under.
Oh, man.
So they rolled me into surgery, put a mask on my face, said, count backward 5, 4, 3, and I'm out. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in surgical recovery, and it's like I'm 20 meters down in a pool. And I can hear a faint, John, John. And it's like I'm fighting to get to the surface, fighting, swimming to get to the surface. And finally, when I came to enough to realize it was my dad's voice that was saying, John, you're waking up. Come on, wake up. I found my dad sitting on the edge of the bed holding my hand and smiling. But I looked around my room and I didn't see my mom. So I asked my dad for my glasses. And I tried to put on the glasses, and my head was bandaged, so that was tricky. But I managed to get them on, and my mom was standing way across the room with this look of horror on her face. And I didn't understand in the moment what was going on because at that point I didn't know my face was paralyzed. And what was going through her mind was, what did these butchers do to my poor son's face? And in hindsight, I realized it was that moment when the one person in my life that was supposed to love me unconditionally didn't want to look me in the face any longer. And that's what led to my downward spiral. So anyway, I spent a week in the hospital, and the doctor came in a couple times, and I said, when's my face going to move? And they said, John, we had control of your face up until when we closed the incision, so we think it's just swelling related. And when the swelling goes down, you'll be able to smile again. So I was relieved and hopeful at that point. So I got home and started recovering, and then I developed a spinal fluid leak out of the base of the incision.
Oh,
So I had to go back to the doctor numerous times, and finally I said, look, you're going to have to just open the incision back up and fix it. My dad and mom being attorneys, that was easy to get them to do. Um, so anyway, so I spent another 2 days in the hospital after they redid the incision and got home, and I started being able to relax and started being able to heal. You know, when you go through brain surgery, you just don't realize how much energy that takes out of you. You know, I would be able to be up for 2 hours and I'd have to take a nap. But I was bored and I couldn't watch TV. And back in those days, all you had were soap operas on TV. So I started working my computer consulting job again and started talking to clients and talking to the guys who work for me and organizing stuff and troubleshooting. But I had to do it in spurts. The next thing I know, I'm starting to get invitations for reunions, college and high school reunions, and parties and birthday parties. And I'm like, I don't want people to see me like this. I want people to remember the John that they knew, not the new John. And so I started hiding. And that became, unfortunately, really easy to maintain. and I hid for 12 years.
I wanna put some context in this for people who are listening and have not yet read your book, because you were your book really beautifully tells the story of how engaged you were in your social life and all aspects of life with your classmates, with activities. You were just a happy and curious and outgoing person, and
Yeah,
now you have had a golf ball-sized tumor pressing on your brainstem, and the procedure has left you not wanting to engage at all.
right. And I wasn't forced to engage, so I chose to play it safe and just stay at home and spend time with close family and really close friends. But I was not about to go to a gathering, a birthday party, or anything like that because I didn't want the questions. There was a local restaurant, Tony Rama's restaurant, near me. And one day I was strong enough to go out and get a bite to eat. And I'm sitting there in a booth, and there's a family, two parents and a little boy sitting in the booth in front of me. And the little boy was restless, so he turned around and was kneeling on the back looking at me. And his head was kind of tilted and cocking to the left, and he looked curious. So he literally got up and walked over and he said, "Mister, what's wrong with your face?" And in that moment, I wanted to say, "Just get away, don't bother me." But I took the high road and I started explaining to the little boy why my face was paralyzed. But before I had a chance to, his mom got up, grabbed him by the arm, and said, "Don't bother the nice man. He has enough troubles already." And then I knew I had to engage with this family. So I got up from the table and walked over to their table and knelt down so I was eye level with the boy. And I said, you have a really good question. See, I had a medical procedure that made me not be able to move my face, but it's my new face, and I love it because it's mine. And it's different. It's different just like yours. And the little boy took his fingers and started tweaking his face to look out of sorts, tilted like mine, and turned to his mom and said, "Look, Mom, I can do that too." And he was just such an innocent, no judgments. The only judgments were the judgments of his parents saying, "Don't bother the nice man." And after that interaction, I looked at his parents and they were ashamed that they were putting their views on their child and limiting their child's ability to just explore the world and see people who are different than. And I tell that story in my TED talk because it was one of those moments that gave me hope that I could indeed rejoin the world and I could influence others to look at people who are different with respect and compassion, which was the theme of my TED talk. But it was still hard to get in front of people. So I had done magic as a little boy, and there was a private club in Los Angeles called the Magic Castle. Um, and I had been there as a little kid with my uncle, and so I said, if there's any way I'm going to get out of my shell, it's by doing something I love. And that's one of the key points that I help my coaching clients with. If you find something you're passionate about and you share that with other people, you can't help be attractive. And not in a physical or sexual way, but in a real emotional way. Because they see that passion come out in your speech and in the glisten of your eyes and in a crooked smile or whatever. And they draw strength from that, of being able to live your authentic self. So slowly but surely, I started performing magic. And people would sit at a table with me and they were distracted by my paralysis. So I changed the opening of my act and I would say, guys, welcome. My name is John. I've been doing magic all my life. But in 2002, I had a brain tumor, and when they cut open my brain, they traumatized my facial nerve, hence the paralyzed face. But something happened to me on that operating room table. And I'm not sure what it was because I was unconscious. All I know is I recovered. Well, I realized I had acquired some new skills. And then I would pause and wait for the audience to get on the edge of their seat, wondering what possible skills I could have acquired from having brain surgery. And I look to my right and my left like it's the biggest secret in the world. And I lean in and whisper in a loud voice, guys, I am able to manipulate people's thoughts. And then I do some mental magic. And what that did was two things. Number one, that answered the question that they didn't have the guts to ask or didn't want to ask. Why was my face paralyzed? But second, that shared something personal about me. And through that, they really listened. They really opened their hearts to me. Um, and I would have so many opportunities to have people going through some kind of medical crisis who would come up to me and ask advice on how to manage their disease, manage the side effects of cancer or whatever. And there was one magic experience where I was standing looking for a great group to do a show, and this woman dressed in all baggy black clothes, wearing a hat that reminded me of a witch's hat, was walking down the hallway. And as she passed me, I said, "Hi, how are you?" She stopped, but the look on her face was just leave me heck alone. And then she continued walking downstairs to catch up with the rest of her group. Well, I followed her and I caught up with the group and I said, "Guys, you having a good time?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, this is an amazing place." I said, "Yeah, but have you seen any really good close up magic?" And they shrugged their shoulders. So I said, "Come on, guys, let's go." And there was a little table in the corner with 6 chairs. And we sat down at the table. And the woman who was dressed in baggy black clothes, her name was Darren. And I put her to my right. And my goal for that 30 or 40-minute show was to get Darren to smile because I knew she had something that was completely preoccupying her. So I made the show about her. And every trick I did, every magical moment, is because she did something. She picked a card, he thought of this, whatever. And within 2 or 3 minutes, all of a sudden she started sitting up straight. And her eyes started to sparkle, and she started to smile. And I could tell whatever baggage she brought with her was gone. So I finished the show, and afterwards, normally audiences get up, they clap, and they move on. But these people wanted more. So I shared the story about how I had hid from cameras and mirrors for over 12 years. And on August 3rd, 2017, I went to my first magic convention in Las Vegas. And I was amongst the greatest minds in magic. And I said, damn it, I want to remember these moments. And I started posing for photographs with these great magicians. And I got home and I uploaded the photos to my computer, and it dawned on me if these great minds in magic had no trouble taking a picture with me, what was my problem? And that's really when I started to understand that I was more, my facial paralysis didn't need to define me if I didn't let it. And then all of a sudden, Darren stood up and she motioned for me to stand, and I did. And she gave me one of these bear hugs that you don't soon forget. It's like you haven't seen your sister in 20 years. And she was holding on for dear life. And after what seemed like minutes, which was probably 30 seconds, she stood back and she was tearing up. She said, John, I want to share something with you. 4 years ago, I had a double mastectomy because I have the BRCA1 gene. And my mom, my aunt, my sister, they all had their breast proactively removed, and I was the last in the family to do that. And my friends tried to get me out of the house today, and they literally had to drag me to the castle. I didn't want to be there because I didn't like the way I looked in my own skin. But all of a sudden, I sat down with you, and I could forget about my troubles for a half hour, 45 minutes. But then I heard your story. And in that moment, it made me understand that I've been hiding too by the clothes I choose to wear and the funny hats and my sarcastic sense of humor, not making eye contact. And I think you just shaved 8 years off my hiding journey. And she made herself a promise in that moment, with her friends and I as witnesses, that that would be the last night she would hide. And I fell back into my chair. I was completely overwhelmed. I had no intention, no understanding that my magic and my story could touch someone so deeply. So she had been crying, so she went to the bathroom, and one of her friends was sitting there, and she said, "John, you don't understand what just happened. We've known Darren since college, and we've been trying to support her for the last 4 years. And you did in 30 minutes what we've been trying to do for 4 years." And in that moment, I knew that fixing people's computers wasn't my life's work. It was to take my life's experience of going through life with a paralyzed face and teach people how to get out of their own way, teach people how to celebrate their differences as opposed to hide from them. And I coined the phrase, being different is your superpower, because I wholeheartedly believe that that's the case.
You have such a series of compelling parts of your journey, and we'll talk definitely about more of them. Something that's kind of occurring to me as I'm listening to you tell this story about Darren, is how often so many of us feel like there's a bad spotlight on us, and like everybody is aware or thinking about us the way we might be,
Right,
right? Or that no one like when we're so when we're suffering so much about something, it actually kind of almost eclipses our awareness of a lot that's going on around us, including what other people might be going through. And I think that's just kind of part of the process of being overwhelmed. I'm saying this because I don't know if you know this, but I've worked primarily with people who were medically ill or dealing with serious, sometimes life-threatening illnesses, with chronic pain. Um, and everything that you're saying really resonates. It really makes sense how we can really feel like we can go through such dark periods as we try to make meaning of things that we wouldn't have chosen for ourselves.
right.
Um, and I just wanna say one more thing. I'm glad that you also have shared the parts that were hard, because I think that allows other people to give themselves grace for feeling like, "Oh, I wanna be able to see the beauty in this challenge, but it's so hard." Like, as if they're not supposed to acknowledge that, yeah, it's like it's hard. It's not a straight line. It can be
Yeah.
a really rocky road.
A lot of people say, John, if you had to do it over again and you could go back and erase the diagnosis and not go through that surgery and recovery, would you? And the answer is no. I do it exactly the same way because my story and my new love for life, my new insights have helped so many people. I've always lived my life feeling it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission. And that's bit me in the butt a couple times, I have to admit. But it's also given me some of the greatest experiences of my life. One of my idols in the entertainment industry was Alex Trebek.
Ah, yes.
And I used to watch Jeopardy, and I was never able to answer half the questions, but that didn't matter. But I was so mesmerized by his strength. And then he came out on national television and said, I need my fans' prayers and thoughts because I'm going through pancreatic cancer. Such a strong thing to do, such a brave thing to do. And I had helped people cope with cancer and the recovery. So I found his daughter, Nikki, and I said, Nikki, I need to perform magic for your dad, and I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I invited them to join me at the castle. That wasn't possible. They didn't, Alex didn't want to be amongst um, strangers. So they said, we're having a 75th birthday party for him, and we have no entertainment. So if you want to entertain he and the rest of his friends and family, by all means, come on down. And I wrote my own special magic show with a Jeopardy theme just for Alex. And after the show, he was sitting at the table beside me. And if you go to johnkippen.com, under the magic session, there are a couple video clips of me performing for Alex. And he was so curious. He was so bugged by he couldn't figure out how the magic was being done. But he was enjoying it so much. But after the show, he and I went to another room in the restaurant. I shared with him why I had reached out to him. That, I wanted him to know that he was noticed. That I heard his plea for prayers and positive thoughts. And I just want to say thank you for being who you are. Your life's work has been amazing for so many millions of people. And I'll bet you people take it for granted. And he started getting emotional. He said, John, you're so right. No one ever thanks me for what I do. And they take me for granted. They think I'm getting paid millions of dollars a year, and that's enough. But it's not. I want to know that my life's work is making difference in people's lives, and you just proved that to me. And we hugged, and it was one of my proudest moments. And if I didn't go out and seek him out and not take no for an answer, I would never have had that experience. So, a lesson to your viewers and your listeners that if you have a dream, which I'll talk to in a minute about dreaming, if you have a dream, you can make it possible. You just have to formulate a plan and not let anybody keep you from achieving that dream. I think as I remember as a kid, I would grow up with my folks, and they would have an adult friend come over and for dinner, whatever, and they'd come in, and the first thing the adult friend would say to me, the 7 or 8 year old John, was, "Hi, John. My name's so and so. What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would sit there and think for a second. I go, "I want to be a doctor. No, I want to be a rocket scientist. No, wait. I want to be a rock star." And then I'd grab a couple rulers and go into my room and start banging on stuff like it's a drum set and start playing an air guitar. And I could stay in that land of make believe for hours, or at least till mom said dinner was ready. And at some point, as we grow up and we get a job and we build a career and we build a family, we stop dreaming as adults and we settle for where we ended up. And for many of us, that's not what we wanted. We're living our mom's dream or our parents' dream or someone else's dream. So that's so important to remember to take time to just remove any of the impossibilities out of your life and just dream about what would make you truly happy, what would bring joy to you, and try to do that. And that doesn't mean it has to be the only thing you do. You can have a job, you can have a family, but still have time in your life for things that bring you joy.
So true.
Yeah. And so many adults just have forgotten how to dream.
So interesting. It's so timely that you're bringing that up because as I was thinking about the new year coming, like how important it is for people to really give themselves time and space to imagine, well, who would you want to be if you could choose, if you weren't trying to live somebody else's life and you just referred to that, or trying to do things that you think, other people want you to do and so forth. Um, it sounds like the journey that you have been on has given you really so much courage and permission to just say, "The heck with it." Like, who do I actually really wanna be, and what do I want my life to unfold like, and what brings me joy, and, like, why am I here? And I think those are really important questions for us to ask ourselves.
I'm a big fan of Mel Robbins,
I think everybody is a big fan of Mel Robbins, and for good reason.
and she has the let them theory,
Yeah.
and it's so true. If someone doesn't like something, let them think it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to affect your life because someone thinks differently. So I'm committed the rest of my life to helping people get out of their own way because we are our worst enemies, and we overthink, we over rationalize, we over emotionalize, and um, if you just take some simple exercises, one being daydreaming about how you would like things to be different, it gives you hope. It's so important.
100%. 100%. It seems like, and again, I'm thinking back to your book that I'm gonna say, I think you were naturally wired to some significant extent, and this is a good thing, to allow yourself to daydream and allow yourself to pursue things that really are meaningful to you. I'm thinking, just is it okay if I go over a little bit from your
Yeah,
background? Because I mean,
absolutely.
you know You you talk about how you were introduced to magic when you were age 5 by your uncle Milton, and that right then, you started learning, he would bring you or new magic tricks to learn. Um, it seems like you had and have a really, uncanny ability to, relate to, all kinds of people with all kinds of interests, but pursuing your interest in magic, I'm just thinking, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but you learned some of your magic from being Doug Henning's apprentice back in the day.
Yeah,
You met and, spent the day with Siegfried and Roy teaching, them how to use a computer. It sounds like they weren't super uh, wired for learning computers
yeah,
and decided it's not for me. But you tried. I mean, you have confidently gotten autographs from some of the biggest celebrities throughout the last several decades, and because it brings you joy and you figured why not? Jane Mansfield, Marvin Hamlish, John Wayne. And I just wanna kinda paint a picture that it seems like you have within you this spirit of saying, "Why not?" You you tell the story. I'm gonna let you tell the story, but in your book about meeting Evil Knievel, I don't know if you wanna tell that story, but I think it's just hilarious
so
and great.
I was a tinkerer, and I was fascinated with locks and keys. And every time I would be walking down the street and I would look down and there was a key on the ground, I would pick it up and add it to my key ring, never knowing when it would come in handy. And my grandmother, once she moved out of her Hollywood Hills home, one of her friends owned the Sportsman's Lodge Hotel, which is a hotel in Studio City, LA. And he invited her to live there for her retirement. So I would go and visit her every week, every Saturday. And I only could spend so much time with grandma. And then I would go and roam the hotel. And I'm this little 10-year-old boy, and everybody loved little Johnny, and everybody would teach me something. And one of the hotel engineers was the locksmith, and he taught me how to pick locks, good, bad, or
I
indifferent.
don't know if that's the skill your grandmother would most have wanted you to learn, but,
Yeah,
you were very
yeah.
inquisitive and highly,
I needed to
skilled with
understand
that
how
stuff.
things worked.
Yeah.
That's just the way my brain worked. So one Saturday, I arrived at this person's lodge, and the parking lot had this huge semi trailer, and I was curious. So as I walked to the side of the semi trailer, um, stenciled on both sides was Evil Knievel. And so as I'm walking around the cab of the truck, I look up, and just outside my reach, there's this little keyhole. And it's one of those cylinder keys. And I had a key that looked just like it would fit in that lock on my key ring. And I thought to myself, huh,
Why not?
I think it'll fit, but will it turn? So there I am getting on my tippy toes and trying to put the key in the lock. And it gets stuck because I was putting it in a wrong angle. And there I am, and all of a sudden I'm feeling these waves of sweat
Oh,
going
no.
through my body. Like, oh my God, is someone going to catch me? And what's going to happen? And before I had a chance to collect myself and jump up and try to remove the key, what are you doing, kid? From behind me. And I turned around, and it was Evil Knievel himself. And I was honest. I said, I collect keys, and I was admiring your truck and saw this key and this lock, and I thought my key might fit. And as he removed my keys and handed them back to me, he said, you remind me a lot of me when I was your age. And then he immediately said, are you hungry? I was like, yeah. And there he had the hotel had a coffee shop. So we went into the coffee shop and we sat together for half hour, 45 minutes while I had a grilled cheese sandwich. And he just shared stories of his many, many jumps and how many bones he had broken. And he was just present with me. There was something that he saw in me, he saw himself in me. And instead of scolding me, he wanted to befriend me. And then a couple of weeks later, we got a call from the front desk of the hotel saying there's this huge package here with your name on it. So my dad drove me down, and we went and we got it, and we opened it up, and it was a framed picture of the poster from him jumping the Snake Canyon that was signed to me. It was just another one of those experiences that I will really remember for the rest of my life.
It sounds like, you've so just you rediscovered, even despite 12 years of understandable struggle, but you rediscovered the the, um, the kind of wide-eyed curiosity and sense of adventure that you had as a little boy, like, you've allowed
Yeah.
yourself to tap into that, and I'm wondering if that's something you help your coaching clients tap into too. I'm curious about how, some of the things that you want people to know, or the ways you kind of help people get out of their own way, because it's so hard when you feel stuck, it. It's like it's like, "Oh, where do I begin?" So how do you help people?
It's dreaming. We do a lot of dreaming exercises where we remove any restriction, any limitation, and we just get into that space where everything is possible. That's why my coaching method is called the I'm Possible method. Um, and one of my key technologies, or I don't even know what to call it, methods that I developed is the tripod method. And it stems from when I was in college doing a theatrical production for a children's group. And I had to build a tripod-like structure that would hold a pot of soup over a fire. And then I was in the scene shop with all the raw materials out on that table. And I was stuck. I just didn't know how to take action, how to put two and two together. And I found myself just frozen and staring at these pieces. And my instructor, his name was Jerry Abbott, and he was from Paducah, Kentucky. And he was this guy who wore green suspenders and always had a cigar hanging out of his mouth and thick Kentucky accent. And he walked into the scene shop and saw me just frozen. He says, "Boy, I didn't take you to raise. What are you doing?" I said, "Jerry, I'm just having trouble getting started building this tripod." And he says, "Boy, get out of your head. Okay, here we go. Take the 4 pieces of wood, okay? Tie a rope around the top. Take another rope, splay the legs, and tie a rope around the bottom. Okay, take another piece of rope, hang a hook. You built a tripod. Get out of your frickin' head." And in 2 minutes, we built a tripod. And so many of us say when we're up against a challenge, we finally cross and we succeed. We look back and say, "Boy, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was." So my tripod method is to find one of those times in your life where you succeeded despite your apprehension, despite how big the challenge was, and assign a word or a phrase to that feeling of accomplishment. So the next time you're up against a wall and you don't know how to do something, just say to yourself tripod or whatever your word is over and over again. It's like magic that all of a sudden you start to feel all those feelings of accomplishment when you achieved that initial thing, which gives you that confidence to just pick two sticks up and put them together until something works, something clicks.
Get out of your own way
Get out of your own way. Stop holding yourself back.
and don't let the momentary challenge make you think it's a permanent thing.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't say that well, you said it better, but
But that exercise has helped so many people literally get out of their own way and stop, you know. The only time something is possible was when you stop trying. And that's actually a word that I've removed from my vocabulary.
so John, you have shared so much and I know there's so much more that people can learn from you. Your book is just a really enjoyable read. It's so inspiring. You mentioned in the beginning of the episode that there is a link that you would tell them where they could read your book for free. Very generous of you. Do you want to share that link?
Sure. It's my name, JOHNKITTEN.com/free gift. And it'll take you to a page where you'll enter your name and email address. And then it'll take you to a link to download a PDF version of the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally worth it, totally engaging. I'm really enjoying reading it. And, you do share, quite a few of your techniques for helping people, again, feel, do, and live better in the book. But how can people reach you to not only learn more about you, but to learn more about your coaching?
You can go to johnkippen.com or you can go to kippencoaching.com. And I have so much content on johnkippen.com.
So,
Magic that I perform, links to the documentary, links to the edit. I've been featured in 20 magazines, done dozens of podcasts because I really want to help people. It's what fills my heart. One of my phrases that I use all the time is feed your heart with your art. And it's so true because if you share what makes you you, what you're passionate about in your everyday interaction with people, they can't help but being attracted to you. They can't help loving you because you're your authentic self. You're genuine. And that's what we need in today's society is more people who are straight shooters and genuine.
Absolutely. And I have to say too, people absolutely should check out the documentary. It's only 15 minutes long. It's so well produced. It's really engaging. Jamie Lee Curtis is one of your co-stars in the documentary and many other people as well. But between that and the book and the clips on your website, people really will get a clear sense of you and who you are and what it would be like to work with you and be inspired by all that you have learned. So I'm excited to share your journey with everyone. And I love, I've always believed magic was real, and it's wonderful what you are expressing through your magic and how you beautifully combine that with all of the other things you're trying to help people to learn.
I don't have all the answers. And in my coaching program, I ask questions that guides my clients to finding their own answers, as opposed to saying, I think you should do this, or I think you should try this. I guide them to understanding and figuring that out on their own because it was my idea, they don't stick. But if it's your idea, you're more apt to, huh, let me try that. Let me experiment with that. And that's a skill that good coaches have is to lead you to the water. The client has to actually do the drinking.
Yes, absolutely. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been so nice to get to connect and chat with you and hear more about your story. I will put in the show notes where everybody can reach you and encourage them again to make sure they check out your book. But, I really appreciate you making the time to come on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.
I had a great time.
Likewise. So, this has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you enjoyed the episode, and I know you did, please remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And as always, until next time, be well.